is we're going to be, again, talking more about this, the new phenomena, the permissive parenting, and what our job is today. And this is the cover of Time magazine, the me generation. Have you experienced this, that we sort of have a exorbitant number of kids who are entitled, sort of self-righteous? The numbers in Canada are staggering, and I work with a lot of people that work in education. I actually slipped this slide in last night because something new has happened in Canada. Maclean's Magazine is our national news periodical, I guess you would call it. And this edition came out just like, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. It's time to stand up to your kids. It was called The Collapse of Parenting was a subtitle in social media. This was the best-selling edition of this magazine in its history. So it speaks to two things. It speaks to the idea that, honestly, parenting is a ripe topic right now. And it speaks to the idea that we really are at a time of confusion. And what my biggest concern is that we are seeing more and more people feeling that those entitled and self-righteous kids need to be pulled back into line by going back into those old autocratic brick wall ways. And that what we have seen is that in that hierarchy, if the king steps down from the throne, if the parent no longer takes a leadership form in the family, what our kids do is they see a vacancy in the top position and they jump right in there. And so if you have been, if you grew up in that era where dad ruled the fort and it was his chair and you jumped out when he got home, what we're seeing is the flip of that now, that most parents that are coming to me are saying things like, you know, I'll give you some, these are true examples, and I love collecting stories because it's the wispy end of, like, it's pretty dysfunctional that makes it, you know, interesting to me. And it's people you don't know because they're up in Canada. But I had a woman who, for example, her child would not walk to school. And so the parent had to take her on a toboggan to school. And this is like a kid in grade 2, so we're talking some weight. And it was about a 40-minute toboggan ride to school, which was fine when it was winter. This mother would put this kid on a metal toboggan and drag it down the concrete sidewalks, 40 minutes, to school. And what does the mother say? Well, I have to, because if I don't do that, they won't go to school. I've got to get them to school. You see her plight. I had another mom. She had twins. The only way these twins would eat lunch is if she bought them ham from a certain grocery store, and they were in a step 2 wagon, and she was walking in circles around her dining room. Right? And as soon as she would stop pulling, they would stop eating. She's like, I have to do it. They won't eat. Right? I mean, I'm giving you extreme stories, but you see these parents feel really powerless as to what they're going to do. But you see these kids they're really ruling their parents. It's still a slave-tyrant relationship. It's just that children have become tyrants. The tyranny in the family is the children ruling their parents. And it's not okay. And I don't want it to go back to us feeling like we need to go back to old methodologies. It's really our time as Adlerians to step up and put out that other option for parents so that we don't make that mistake and go backwards. Like I said, we're just going to get kids who rebel. So in Adlerian terms, Adler talked about the word pampering, which you're not going to read that word outside of our literature. It's not a common word. It's much more in our language. But if we think about what it is to be a pampered child, you know, Adler was talking about the idea that life inherently calls upon us to meet challenges, and that the child comes into the world completely dependent on others for its care. It's part of us being part of that social creature that we're born into collectives, and that the human baby is completely dependent on other people for its care. That it can't feed itself, it can't thermoregulate, somebody's got to wrap it in clothes and hold it tight, somebody's got to nurse and suckle it. It can't live independently. 100% independence is required. And that the idea of parenting then is to move the child from that complete state of incapability and dependence towards autonomy and having skills and becoming independent. Now, unfortunately, we tend to stop there. We don't want just independent children. We want to take it a little bit further. We want kids who can be interdependent, because that is the nature of life, is to get along with our fellow man, to be able to fit into social groups so that we can have those healthy relationships. So preparing our kids for life is preparing them with all the skills and autonomy and mastery that they need to move from dependence, independence to interdependence. And that we have to help them face those struggles of life. So when we look at the example of the chick and the egg, if you see a chick trying to break its way out of a shell when it's ready to crack, and the little beak is sticking through, what would happen if you said, oh, the poor little guy's struggling, he can't get out of the little egg, well, I'm going to go help him out. And you peel the egg away from a baby chick, what happens? Dead. Because that struggle to peck, to break out of the shell, is the work that increases the strength of the muscles that is responsible for holding its neck up and for the breathing apparatus and the pectoral muscles. And so the struggle builds its strength. It's preparation for life outside the egg. And the struggles that our kids need to do in the family is part of growing their strength and resiliency so that they are prepared for life outside the family. Those struggles are actually important and healthy. And we see this in other models as well. We see this with a bone. If you break a bone skiing and they put you in a cast, the muscles atrophy for a while, but if you actually build your muscles back up and you go back and take an x-ray of that bone, where the break was, the body will have put down more bone deposits, right? It's actually going to be the strongest part of the bone is where it was broken before, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that we go around breaking, giving our kids horrific experiences in order for them to build up resiliency. But the question becomes, what are those struggles? What is that autonomy? What is our work there? So in the new Adlerian model of social equality, it begs the question that if we don't have the king or the dad giving the rules on high, what becomes the new authority in a democracy? What becomes the new authority? Well, the new authority is called the needs of the situation. What do the needs of the situation call for? And I'm constantly having to check back on that. What do the needs of the situation call for? That's going to be the truth that we go to. So a child is running around in a restaurant and you'd like them to sit down. We can ask ourselves, what's the needs of the situation? Do children run around? What's the social order in restaurants? Do we run around and disturb others? The needs of the situation call for us to stay in our seat so that the waitress can get by, which is a very different perspective than get in your seat because I say so, which is all about my personal power, my way, my idiosyncratic way of doing things, and you will mind my will. But I can look around and say, well, the needs of the situation say little bodies need to be in the chair so we can all stay safe, right? So I'm constantly looking for that idea of if I just ripped the roof off of all the houses in my neighborhood and kind of scanned around and looked at the social order, you know, what needs to be happening for people? What do the needs of the situation call for? So we want to prepare our kids for this.